how to negotiate the best car deal possible. It's a skill, it's a tactic you need to have today to save money. A lot of these dealerships, they've been doing this a long time. Their salespeople are quite often very skilled, they're trained, and they know exactly how to pull the rug out from under you. And not only that, I too have got that level of experience. I've been in the car industry a long time. I'm helping friends and family. I just want to cut to the chase. I've got 5 major simple tactics that you probably want to follow, and I'm going to break this down for you because we all need a break. With these car prices absolutely horrendous the way they've been in this last 3 or 4 years, everybody needs a little bit extra insider tip. So I'm going to break this from the top. I've got my list of 5 items. And first of all, you want to think about how to prepare for this negotiation. You're thinking about that next car that you're looking at buying, or that SUV or that truck. I've got into dealerships recently and they still try to play games. It's unbelievable. I went in and looked at a new 4Runner. It was the outgoing 4-liter, and I said, how much? And they said, well, we don't have one on the lot, but if we can find one, we're probably going to charge you $8,000-$10,000 above sticker just because they're rare. They're hard to come by. Well, I wasn't buying that, and I called them out, and I walked out. I said, you know what, when you're ready to talk, we'll talk. Nobody's paying over sticker these days. It's simply not worth it. But let's take this one from the top. So the first is preparing for the negotiation. Knowing your budget. We all need to have a budget, but ideally, it's a dollar amount. See, too many people get locked into the idea of, how much can I spend each and every month? And see, unfortunately, well, a lot of people do a monthly budget, and that's how they just simply get by. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the best tactic. Ideally, you know how much your ultimate dollar is, how much you want to spend on that car. $30,000, $50,000, $70,000. Whatever that budget is, ideally that's what you want to target, and you want to target how long you want to hold on to that. So if you're selecting a longer loan term, say a 7, 8, 9 year loan term, even 5 or 6 years, you're probably going to be underwater for the first 2 or 3 years, especially on most North American products. Definitely on a lot of EVs, you're going to be underwater. In other words, negative equity. In other words, you're going to owe more to the bank for the first 2 or 3 or 4 years than the vehicle is actually worth. So if you were to have to flip it or trade it in, you're going to lose money. Don't want to put yourself in that predicament. So ideally, you put more money down, and you certainly want to be able to have some money or good trade-in quality that's going to command a top dollar. Or, of course, you just have to think about what that monthly budget is, or, in fact, more importantly, what that lump sum budget is. Because ultimately, you dictate then those terms, ideally. So if you know how much you want to spend, say $40,000, know exactly how much you have to spend. Do you have 40 grand to spend over 3 years, 4 years? Well, then we can break that down based on current interest rates. So the first thing is knowing your budget. The second point to that is researching the car's fair market value. And with that said, fair market value, what is fair market? There's nothing fair these days. The market's a gouge fest. So what I like to do is look across the entire marketplace. I quite often use great facilities like cargurus.com.ca. Go on there, and you can do a great spread on the type of vehicle. You can break it down, your area where you live, the type of vehicle, the specification. Maybe you want to look for an F-150 Lariat. Maybe you want to look at something slightly used. Then I quite often go from, say, 2020 to 2024 model years. And then, of course, I'm able to figure out what that market value is. It's pretty easy to start searching that down and expand that out nationwide, maybe statewide, province-wide, citywide. Whatever that is, understand what the average, what the fair market value is. Now, we all know that these probably charged a little more than they're actually worth. In most cases, they're not worth that kind of money. But clearly, you want to make sure that you're understanding at least where you're starting and that you're not overpaying. Never, ever pay market adjustment fees. That's the biggest ripoff. But again, know what the fair market value is and go below that, because a lot of these asking prices, car gurus are going to share what a lot of dealers are asking. That's never the final pricing, of course, a lot of these vehicles. This is the asking price. Asking price usually is around sticker or thereabouts, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And you want to target below that. You want to be between invoice and sticker, which invoice is usually, that 5 to 10% below sticker price. So you want to be targeting in that range, ideally. And so if they're asking $45,000, I'd be looking at coming in there at, say, at least $38,000, $39,000 as a starting point, and hopefully finishing in that, 38, 39, 40, 41,000, as opposed to that $45,000. You always want to be targeting significantly below, but at least it gives you an idea what the fair market value is. Determine as well as the non-negotiables. The things that you need to have. Do you need to have four-wheel drive? Do you have a truck? You're looking for a truck. Does it need to be four-wheel drive? That's a must-have. Does it need to have the crew cab? If that's a must-have because you've got a growing family, check off the box. Do you need to have the sunroof and leather? Maybe not. So that's not a non-negotiable. So make sure that you know fundamentally what you want and don't be talked into upgrading. See, that's the understanding. You said non-negotiables. Don't let those dealers, once you're ready to step into the negotiations, that you're not letting them talk you into some features that you don't want. Likely, don't look at them talking you into a lower trim level, something that isn't really up to meeting the criteria. Have your criteria, know what the proper colors you're looking for, the trim level you're looking. Not everybody wants the TRX. Maybe some are okay with the lower trim level. Maybe an XLT will work. SUVs, cars, whatever it is. If you're looking for a car, know what that car is. Maybe you want a new Toyota Camry. Well, right now, unfortunately, there's only a hybrid. But if you look at a couple years ago, you might be able to opt. Do you want the 4-cylinder, the 6-cylinder, maybe the hybrid option? Understand what those options are and understand what your core non-negotiables, the colors, the features, the drivetrains. Transmissions are a big one. Avoid CVTs if at all cost. Certainly, if you want to make sure that you've got certain aspects, you want to have that up front, right away. So don't negotiate, basically know exactly what you want. Then naturally move on to the next major header, of course, is looking for the right dealership. It's not hard to start searching. You can do the dealerships in your area if you want to start shopping around. Maybe there's a bad reputation. Go on Yelp, go on a lot of those Google searches, and you can find out reviews by, buyers. And there's always anomalies. There's always that person that has, that they got hard feelings and they clearly don't have a lot good to say about a particular dealership. But sift through the highs and sift through the lows. Look at the average. If the average is 4-star and there's a lot of general positive comments, that's probably a good place to start. Also, don't be scared to travel a little bit. Like if you're living in, say, for example, a city like Calgary, don't be scared to go to Edmonton. If you're in a city like, all over in the U.S., there's always cities, within an hour or two of each other. Don't be scared to travel because sometimes that'll get you better pricing and sometimes a much better reputation by the said dealer. So definitely something you've got to be shopping around. Look at the best prices as well as get quotes. Ideally, you get multiple quotes from these individual dealerships. Always want to be shopping around for quotes. And certainly it's not hard to say, look, call up the dealership. And most of the time they're not going to want to give you quotes over the phone. They should be if they're a reputable dealer and they stand by their pricing. If they want to be shady and kind of dance around the ideas and say, no, we need to talk to you first. Well, thanks. I'm okay. You know what? Ideally, you shouldn't have to go into the dealership. Unfortunately, a lot of dealers are only playing that game now. But ideally, even if you have to go in and get a written quote from a dealership, visit 2, 3, 4 options, get different quotes, because many times there's different dealers and doing different things and they have different tactics. And sometimes some have quotas they haven't met yet and they're maybe a little hungrier. So of course, get different quotes. Look for the incentives as well as offers. It's not hard to find. Start searching these dealerships. Even look specifically for that brand. You can look online. Sometimes there's special incentives. Maybe they're approaching the end of the month, holiday season, the year end. You're looking for big incentives, especially at the year end. They're often going to knock thousands of dollars off. I'm seeing all kinds of deals. Stellantis, Rams, huge deals right now. Jeeps, huge deals right now. Doesn't mean it's always a good deal, but you've got to start somewhere. So if you're starting with a good deal, you could always negotiate off of that. Now, I'll be honest. I've seen a lot of dealers, and GM and Chevy seem to be particularly bad for this, where they offering these big incentives, but you go in there to try to negotiate, they won't give you $1 off because they're saying, well, we're already giving you a massive deal. And that's nonsense. They're not hungry enough. So start shopping around and you can always find yourself a great deal. Okay, now push come to shove. The next major tactic is starting that negotiation. Of course, ideally what I've always found is treating people respectfully. And it doesn't matter. You don't want to treat them like peons. You want to be polite to salespeople. If they're treating you like a jerk, walk away, go somewhere else. But ideally be polite, be courteous. They're all people trying to earn a living, just like you and I, at the end of the day. So be polite. You know, like the old adage says, you probably catch more bees with honey. I like to believe in that. I don't want to come off as the jerk. I want to talk to them, person to person, and certainly use that as a tactic. The other thing you want to deal when you're negotiating, starting through that negotiation, is they're going to ask you some key ingredients. You know, are you financing in-house? Are you planning on leasing? Do you have a trade-in? Those are key tactics, and they're going to use all of those tactics against you. Because if you have a trade-in, then they know they've got some buffer. They can hose you on the trade-in value, or they can negotiate a little bit better. If you're coming in sharpening your pencils, they can allow for that to get you in the door, knowing that they can rip you off on your trade-in. They've got some leeway there. But if they don't know you have a trade-in and they don't know that you're taking in-house financing, because remember, the in-house financing is a factor that you can utilize too for profits. If they know that they don't have much in the price of the vehicle, but they know they've got you on, in-house financing, then they know they may have you potentially on the deal and they can make some money right there. If they're using in-housing financing, then they're using interest rates to their advantage for the long haul. Now, with that said, you've got to read the fine print. You've got to always ask the question, if for some reason you're taking in-housing financing, which I always suggest shop around before you even show up at the dealership, always make sure that you're checking the rates at your own bank, your own financial institutions, and make sure to see what they'll offer you. See what your bank will offer you for a $50,000 car loan. How much will they give you for that bank rate? So make sure you do that research first before going in there. But then when you're negotiating, don't tell them about financing or leasing or trade-ins. Say, I haven't really decided. I want to deal on the car first. Always deal on the price of that truck, SUV, or car. Always, always, always before exposing your cards, because that's negotiating tactics. Always chisel them on the price of the vehicle. And a lot of them won't want a deal like that. I get it. But you've got to find the dealers that are willing to talk and negotiate, because realistically, that is a bargaining chip for them. They want to understand how much they can screw you on the front end with trade-ins, with interest rates on a lease or a loan. So they want to have that information first. And so don't tell them that. Don't. Negotiate on the price of the vehicle first. And so you don't want to expose all your cards. Also, here's one tactic that I always like to kind of live by is you have to. And just like I did with the 4Runner, you have to be willing to walk away. Period. Plain and simple. And too many people they get desperate. They see that flashy new car and they get excited like Jojo the circus boy. And they realize, you know what? No, I need to have that car. And they get excited. And the dealers, they look at you and they're like, wow. And they just look, and you've got that glossed over look as you just, with love in your eyes and bulge in the pants, and they know that this person is super desperate and they want this vehicle and they're willing to pay at all costs. So this is something you don't want to get snookered by. Never ever show your emotions, and certainly be willing to walk away. Always be willing to walk away. If you feel like you're getting hosed on the deal, be willing to walk away. It's a must do. It's a mandatory. I've had so many deals that have gone my way because I was willing to walk away. Years ago, I was buying a Jeep Wrangler. It was a TJ with a manual. Years ago, I went in there, and I didn't have a trade-in. I was going to look at buying at a local Dodge Chrysler dealership, Jeep dealership here in my city. And I looked at it. I liked it. It was the right colors. It had all the right attributes. This was slightly used, just slightly. Low mileage, had all the right things. It had the straight six. It had the stick shift. It was great. I loved it. I fell in love with it. It had two tops, a hard top, soft top. It was great. So I did love it, but I didn't necessarily show my cards. What I did was I drove it. Of course, you have to. You have to test drive these cars and trucks and SUVs. You have to. And so I did, and I liked it, and I chatted with the wife, and we went in there, and they all assume that if you're taking it to the next level, coming into the dealership, talking to the salesperson, sitting down, that's the next step, is they'll offer you a coffee or a water. And as soon as you're like, yeah, I'm in. Yeah, I'll take a drink. Then they know they've got you screwed. That's another little bargaining chip. If you say, no, I'm good, thanks, then that tells them a little passive aggressiveness that you could easily walk out, right? If you sit down and you get comfortable with that coffee, they know they're going to screw you over. And so don't take the beverage if you're serious. Here's been my general experience. As soon as you take that, they know they've got you by they've got you by the collars. So don't take the beverage, but go in there, and as soon as they see that you're sitting down getting comfortable, they know they've got you. So what I did was I went in there, Of course, you have to negotiate. So at some level, if you're serious, you're going to go in there. They're going to assume that this person's serious. A lot of dealers will put up their backs and start giving you a third degree on deals. This is where we sat down. They had a number. I had a number. We went back and forth 2 or 3 times. And I said, no, that's not good. They're like, well, that's the bottom line. That's all we can do. I'm not good with that. Okay, well, thanks very much. I'll take your card. See you later. And so me and the wife, I grabbed my wife. We walked out the door. I just closed the door. I unlocked the car, which we were parked right in front of the dealership. I unlocked my car. My wife was just getting in, and I was just opening the door. Salesman comes running outside. I look. He kind of lightly touches my arm and says, oh, hang on. I think we can make a deal here. And it was hilarious because all of a sudden he just come in, he said. We went in there and we ended up getting the price that we wanted. So play coy, be willing to walk. It does actually help. And is it going to get you half off? No. But it's going to get you sometimes those little bargaining chips. I also had the same thing with a Mustang GT years ago. I hammered them. I screwed them with the lowball number. And they wouldn't take it. They weren't even close. They're like, it was something like 20,000. They went down to 19.8, 19.7, 19.5. And I was like 16. They're like, no, we're not even close. I said, see you later. And as I was walking out the door, it was hilarious. All of a sudden the manager comes over and says, okay, hang on. We'll do your price. Can you give us an extra $100? We have to pay for the administrative fees. No, I'm not paying for anything. I said it's $16,000. That's it. And you know what? Sometimes they'll let you walk and sometimes they won't. And I was willing to take the chance and they made the deal and I bought that Mustang and I bought it and I owned it for 3 years and it was perfect. So anyway, the bottom line is be willing to walk away if the deal is not right. So then negotiate the price. That's the next major thing you have to think about. What is it like, the negotiations? So do your research and think about the walkaway power, and leverage that. As I already said, you have to be willing to walk away. Leverage that you can walk away. And if you have to do it for 2 or 3 dealerships, so be it. But do your research. Know what the value of these vehicles are. Understand what it means to you. Understand what the difference between MSRP as well as invoice, and understand what, the time of the year and how desperate some of these dealers are, and leverage that walkaway power. Don't tell them what your budget is. They're going to say, well, how much do you have to spend per month? Big mistake, everybody. Never, ever, tell them what your budget is. They're going to ask you, well, how much can you spend a month? Oh, I can spend $800. Wrong. Never, ever tell them how much you can spend. Okay. And as I've said, ideally, not everybody works this way. Ideally, I'd suggest coming up with your lump sum value and then say, look, you may yourself know I can afford $600 a month. Okay, $600 over 4 or 5 years. It's a $30,000 car. Say, you know what? For your own self, you might be willing to go up to $40,000 and extend that to a 4-year time frame or a 5-year time frame. But in your own mind, you know what that looks like. But don't share that with them. You may only have $500 a month. Don't share that piece with them. Go in there, negotiate on that $40,000 car and say, no, this is the car because I like this car or this style of car. And they're always going to ask you too, well, what else have you looked at? The research that you need to do upfront beforehand gets you 2 positions, a power of strength, position of strength. Number 1 is not just, okay, you want this make and model and trim level, but they will, and they have quite often asked me, what other vehicles have you been looking at? And they'll ask you very candidly. And that's why I always do the research. Say, for example, I looked at a Volkswagen Tiguan. Great. Well, what else have you looked at? Well, actually, we've looked at a couple of other vehicles. We've looked at the Mazda CX-50, and we've also looked at the, you could throw another name out there, like Toyota Highlander, for example, or the Toyota RAV4. And you could say, look, I've looked at these are the 3 vehicles I'm looking at. But don't necessarily say that you've looked at them yet. Say you're going to have a look at, say you looked at maybe the Honda CR-V, but you're going to look at the Toyota and you're going to go look at the Mazda right away. We still have to deal with them. That way it puts you in a position of power because it says to them that there's some quality vehicles that you still haven't looked at yet. And you use the more reputable vehicles. So if you're looking at a Volkswagen today, you still have to look at the Mazdas and the Toyotas. And everybody knows those are reliable cars, right? So use that bargaining chip. You don't have to say they're quality cars. Everybody knows it in the business. So say, yeah, I have to still look at the Toyota. I've looked at the Honda. I love it. I just want to see what Volkswagen had to offer. So you try to drop it like that. You don't say you love the Honda. You don't say you hate it. You say, yeah, I looked at the Honda. I'm going to go look at the Toyota and the Mazda, but I want to see what Volkswagen had to offer. So that's why we're here. So that's how you want to come at it. You always have some other options. It gets you the option of, say, an option of strength. So they want to stop you there. They don't want you to go shopping somewhere else. So this is what I've learned very, very quickly in some times in negotiations. Make sure that you have somewhere else to go, because it makes them hungrier to make a deal now. They don't want you to leave, because if you leave, you might buy something else. But it also puts you in a position of, it allows you out the door. So if you need time to even think about it, maybe you do like that car that you're shopping for. Maybe you do like that Volkswagen. But it allows you the buyout. It allows you to say, look, we're going to go think about it. We want to give it some time. We'll get back to you. It allows you to get out the door without being, harassed too aggressively. So definitely understand your budget and your options. The other thing you have to think about is, be prepared to negotiate on the financing and the trade-in value. Be prepared. But that only comes after you've already negotiated the deal on the new vehicle. If you've been shopping for that new Volkswagen Tiguan or that new Ram, if you've been shopping for those vehicles, you've already chiseled down the pricing. You've nailed it. This is where we want to be. Then you can introduce the conversation about trade-ins. Yeah, I have that old jalopy out there. How much you give me for that thing? I love it. I could keep riding it, but I'm just thinking about upgrading. Don't downplay it, but just how much are you willing to trade that in for? Same thing with financing. Lease options. Lease options aren't great unless you're using write-offs for business. Some people like to get into leases if they want to buy a BMW or an Audi or a Mercedes, where they feel like owning them long-term is risky. Sometimes people do look at leasing, but leasing is really nothing more than a rental. So you're really not gaining much, and you never have any equity built into it. So leasing's more, if you're short-term and you really don't plan on to hold on to something very long, leases are fine. Finance options are fine. Again, as long as you've shopped around before, check your own financial institutions, make sure that you've got the numbers in your head already, and that way you can see what their numbers are. Also, if you are looking at their financing, ask the question. It's so imperative. If there's any penalties on an early buyout, you have to ask that question, because if they say, yeah, no, you have to pay $1,500 or there's a penalty if you pay off early, well, that's something you want to know, you don't want, because ideally, here's what I like to do. I like to actually pay cash, but cash deals never get the deal because they need to have financing. They need those interest charges. They need to make that money somehow. So quite often, I might even have cash for that vehicle, but I'll take the in-house financing if it means getting a better deal on that vehicle, and then I'll pay off that financing after a month. I'll take the car on the financing terms, as long as there's no penalties involved in paying for that vehicle off soon. Then I basically take that vehicle, financing, make one payment, and then pay it off in its entirety. That's how I look at this. So having cash is king. But don't tell the dealers you have cash, because that's one of the biggest knocks against getting a deal. Basically, the other things that you have to think about is a couple of considerations in finalizing the deal is, looking over these contracts again, making sure that you're not getting hosed on any early buyouts, making sure that you're not getting hosed on any fine print, any of the items, making sure your warranties are there, that you hope, right? Ideally, you want to make sure that there's no exclusions that are important to you, like quality and drivetrains and issues like that. Making sure you've done your research as well on recalls and find out, on closure of recalls that might exist for that particular vehicle. We know some vehicles are going through a lot of problems. GM and Chevy, some big recalls. Making sure you understand the terms and conditions, and certainly don't be don't be signing anything that you're not sure about. I mean, if you have to take it away and say, look, I'm not signing this, I need to understand those terms a little bit better. If you need to walk away and say, look, I just need a week to understand this, then be willing to do that, because don't sign something that you shouldn't sign. So many people have been getting hosed in the last few years, getting into these bad arrangements, long-term bad deals, and then just paying for years. It's just not good. Certainly don't get into long-term deals. Certainly don't get into 96-month term loan terms. Don't take out loans longer than 5 years, as would be my recommendation. 60 months would be the absolute longest. 3 to 4 years is best. But, put a sizable down payment that's going to reduce your payments, of course, as well as reduce the amount of interest charges you're incurring. So all those things are things to think about. Ideally, cash is king. Don't ever reward them with that. Don't tell them that. But seriously, that is a great deal. I hope that shares the entire thing for you. As well with that, where do these vehicles go? If you've been shopping around, why is the inventory so high, and where do they go if they're not selling? These new trucks and SUVs, lots are filling up. What if they don't sell? Where are they going? Who's buying them? You definitely want to understand that. That video tells the entire story. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.